Hey guys, welcome back. Hope you're doing well today. Today we're going to be checking out The Fear of Life by Alexander Lowen. Here it is in case you... Really good book. Let's go ahead and see. There we go. Hello. Testing. Yeah, cool. It works. So now let's go ahead, guys, and check out this reading. We're going to be starting from page 89. And this section is from the chapter Being and Fate. This section is called Being as Non-Doing. In a recent book, Adic Form advances the hypothesis that being is reduced by having. Read that one more time. In a recent book, Adic Form advances the hypothesis that being is reduced by having. He says only to the extent that we decrease the mode of having, that is, non-being. Stop finding security and identity by clinging to what we have, by sitting on it, by holding on to our ego and possession. Can the mode of being emerge? According to Fromm, the two terms, being and having, represent two very different attitudes to life. The having mode is based on possessive relationships. The self is seen as the I that has a wife, a home, a car, a job, even a body. Since the I that has a body is the ego, the having mode is an egocentric position. This mode developed from and depends on private property, power, and profit. Its focus is upon the individual rather than the community. The being mode, on the other hand, is based on loving, giving, and sharing relationships. In this mode, the measure of the self is not in terms of what one owns, but how much one gives or loves. In the being mode, the individual finds his identity through his responsibility to the community. Fromm's expression of the differences between these two attitudes to life is insightful. The possessive mode not only reduces being, it restricts freedom. I'll read that last sentence one more time. The possessive mode not only reduces being, it restricts freedom. The things we own us. We are possessed by our possessions in the sense that we must think about them, worry about them, and take care of them. We are not free to walk away and leave them, because for many of us, they represent our identity, our security, and even our sanctity. We would not hesitate to describe a person as crazy if he gave away a fortune just to be free. We think one can't be free unless one has a fortune. So we spend our lives trying to make a fortune and discover too late that we sacrificed our freedom. We do not realize that freedom is worth more than fortune. For without freedom, one cannot be. There is another antithesis besides the one just described that helps explain human dilemma, the human dilemma. It is between being and doing, the antithesis, that also reflects the two sides of man's nature, the body and the mind, or ego. On the ego level, man expresses himself as a creator. On the body level, he is created. As a creator, his focus is upon doing. As a creature created by God, his role is simply to be. All of God's creatures, except man, just exist. Man is not content just to be. He has to do something, achieve something, create something. The ego drive to create produces culture, which is the glory of mankind. But it can also be the means of his destruction when, for example, it leads to the creation of nuclear weapons. The antithesis between being and doing is recognized by our language. When we say let it be, for example, we mean do nothing. Doing something is not letting it be. Doing represents an attempt to change a situation, which is all right when the situation is an external one. However, when the situation is internal, that is, a state of being, Trying to change this state by doing in a reduction, uh, trying to change this state by doing results in a reduction of one's being. This can be explained by the fact that to act upon the self, one part of the personality must turn against another. The ego, or the I, turns against the body by using the will against the feelings of the body. In this process, being is split and therefore reduced. Such an action may be necessary in the face of real danger, in which case it's not neurotic. It becomes neurotic when the reaction, it becomes a neurotic reaction when the maneuver persists beyond the point of danger. Neurotics are always trying to change themselves by using willpower, but this only serves to make them more neurotic. Emotional health can be gained only through self awareness and self acceptance. Struggling to change one's being only enmeshes the person more deeply in the fate that he is trying to avoid. Does this mean that change is inconsistent with being? The answer depends upon what kind of change one is talking about. Change produced by the application of force from without is the product of doing and affects being adversely. However, there is a process of change that takes place from within and requires no conscious effort. It is called growth, and it enhances being. It is not something one can do. It is not, therefore, a function of the ego, but of the body. Therapeutic change, which means a change in character, is similar to growth in that it is an inner process that cannot be accomplished by conscious effort. This is not to say that doing plays no role in the growth process. In acquiring a skill, it is necessary to repeat certain actions consciously so that learning can occur. But learning itself takes place on the unconscious level. Let us examine some other aspects of being doing antithesis. I have said that doing is an ego function that involves the conscious application of one's energies to a task. The ego is engaged in setting the goal and in controlling the actions to achieve it. On the other hand, then activity in which there is a notable absence of ego involvement belongs to the realm of being. This means that if a goal is secondary to action, the activity would qualify as being more than doing. For example, strolling down the avenue belongs to the mode of being, whereas walking quickly to the station to catch a train is doing. All productive activities, such as preparing a meal, writing a book, or plowing a field, are aspects of doing. However, where pleasure is the dominant motivation, as in dancing or listening to music, the activity is a mode of being. Another important distinction concerns the focus of the activity, where the focus is upon what is happening in the outer world. The activity can be characterized as doing. When the focus is upon what is happening inside, that is, upon the feeling one has during an activity, it partakes in being. It partakes of being. I'll read that sentence one more time. When the focus is upon what is happening on the inside, that is, upon the feeling that one has during an activity, it partakes of being. The distinction is particularly relevant to sex. Some people do sex, that is, they are performers, and their interest is in the effects of their sexual activity has on another person. It's an ego trip for them. For others, sexual activity starts from a strong feeling of desire and ends with a strong feeling of pleasure and satisfaction. When feeling dominates one's sexual activity, it is in the being mode. If the mind, the will, or the ego dominates the activity, it is doing. When feeling simply inspires and guides an activity, it belongs to one's being. Being is equated with feeling. One cannot make or produce a feeling any more than one can make being. To be genuine, a feeling must arise spontaneously. Otherwise, one can be accused of pretending. Further, feelings do not accomplish or produce anything. There is neither goal nor purpose to feeling. In other words, we do not feel in order to. We can give reasons for our feelings, but our feelings do not arise in response to the dictates of our reason. They often occur in opposition to reason. They are our involuntary bodily responses to the world around us, and their function is to promote the living process. It's important to recognize that doing does not involve or lead to feelings and may actually inhibit or block feelings. For example, when I walk from my office to the railroad station with an idea of getting there as quick as possible, I do not experience any feeling other than a sense of pressure about catching the train. All my movements are dominated by the goal, and feeling is irrelevant. In fact, they may handicap an efficient performance. For the sake of efficiency, I transform myself into a machine until the goal is achieved. Machines have no feelings and no sense of being, but they can do things. On the other hand, it is possible to do or to do something with feeling. To have feeling, the process or action must be at least as important as a goal. In the example above, should I walk to the station in a leisurely manner because I have plenty of time, I experience the pleasure of walking and I enjoy looking at the people and the stores. This happens occasionally, but generally I have too much to do. Isn't this rather a universal complaint? Too much to do and too little time to do it. People are so rushed that they don't have time to breathe or to be. Being takes time, time to breathe and time to feel. When we drive ourselves to produce or accomplish, we become like machines and our being is reduced. However, if we pay at least as much attention to the process as to the goal, doing becomes a creative or self expressive action and increases the sense of being. As far as being is concerned, what counts is not what one does, but how one does it. The reverse is true for doing. When an activity has the quality of flow, it belongs to being. When it has a quality of push, it belongs to doing. Oof, got to take some water, guys. I just came back from the gym, so quite dehydrated. Let's see, where did we leave off at? Yeah, when an activity has the quality of flow, it belongs to being. When it has the quality of push, it belongs to doing. One pushes when the goal or end becomes more important than the process or means. An activity that flows is always experienced pleasurably because it stems directly from a desire and leads to the satisfaction of one's need. An activity in which push is required is painful because it is against one's desire or so requires a conscious effort that through the use of will. Most times, writing is a very pleasurable process for me. When I have something I want to say, the writing flows and is easy. When I use my will to write, it is because I don't have anything exciting to say. The writing is painful and poor. I always have to do it over. The distinction between flow and push applies equally to those activities we call play, games, or sport. When winning is more important than playing, the sport or activity is no longer a game, but a job. Thus, we can say for some people, uh, work is a play because it is pleasurable, flow, while for others, it's work because it is painful, push. Unfortunately, too many of our activities are in the doing mode. This is particularly true of the educational process. The emphasis upon achievement and the disregard for feeling make children's resistance to the school system because they sense their being is denied by the system. Since being is related to feeling, it is also related to those spontaneous and involuntary movements and gestures that constitute true self expression. Our spontaneous movement and utterances we experience directly. In our spontaneous movement and utterances, we experience directly the life force within us. We don't get the same sense from our reasoned or deliberate actions. Spontaneous responses bypass the ego and therefore are regarded as authentic or genuine responses of the self. When we respond spontaneously, we don't say, I did it, since the action is not willed by the ego. We tend to adopt the passive tense. We would say, I was moved to anger, or I became angry. These two expressions suggest that some force independent of the ego, or that I acted in the person. These two expressions suggest that some force independent of the ego, or the I, acted in the person to produce the feeling. All emotional experiences are of this nature. They are moving experiences. We relish them because they make us feel so alive, so full of the sense of being. That's interesting. This paragraph is pretty, gives me a lot of questions, but I need some time to reflect on that. It should be pointed out that emotional responses or moving experiences are different from hysterical reactions. A hysterical outburst, though spontaneous and involuntary, is not the same as an emotion. The latter is a total response of the individual. The whole being is moved. Both mind and body, thinking and feeling, ego and id are involved and coordinated in the emotional response. The hysterical reaction is a release phenomenon in which the outburst occurs against the ego. The ego is trying to suppress the feeling, which breaks out despite conscious intention. Normally, the actions of a healthy person show a balance of being and doing, of feeling and thinking, of spontaneity and deliberative response. Full harmony between the ego and the body, I and it, leads to moments that are both spontaneous and controlled. This may sound like a contradiction, but only this combination produces actions that are graceful and efficient, that are completely natural yet totally appropriate to the situation. The individual in whom these forces are harmonized possesses poise, grace, and dignity. In such a person, being is raised to its highest state. Just seeing how much longer this section is. I might end it here and then come back and read this portion at a later date, because that was quite a lot to take in, the difference between being and doing. So I want to take some time to reflect on this. Yeah, this is really an excellent text here, and it causes me to think about how to shift more into that flow state, going with the Tao, the Wu Wei, accepting what is, not fighting against reality, but also finding some sense of pleasure or joy in that. And I think for people who are in the process of reparenting, that can also take some time because the previous experiences that we've had. So I hope you enjoyed this reading, and I'll see you again for the next time. Take care.